from the beginning. So let me just begin and say what an honor it is to have the artist, the man, the legend, the myth, Peter from Toronto, all the way from Toronto, eh?
Thank you. Good night.
My old hometown. So Peter is braving the cold. We're very proud of him. Look at him; he's wearing a parka and a toque, and he's looking spiffy and great. And he is graciously agreed to be our the Songword Art House first artist interview, and I'm very honored to have him. So thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Joe. Oh, and thank you to the audience. Thank you to everyone who is attending.
Yeah, we're gonna have
great to
how they have
great
it.
to see you. Wow, and I guess we have to be careful not to talk over each other because I don't think the technology likes that. Right. One person gets cut out or something. I don't know.
No problem. So I'm gonna make an introduction to Peter a little bit, and I'm gonna let him take it from there because obviously he knows himself best. But Peter has worked with Songword Art House on 2 exhibitions now. The first one was the Blues that we had just prior to the Rebel series that we've got going. And he contributed 2 incredible pieces. One on Nina Simone, a Nina Simone tribute to her song Blackbird. And the other one was an amazing John Lee Hooker piece. We sold the Nina Simone piece, and we still have the John Lee piece here, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But he has also produced 2, I don't know, I didn't think it was possible to top the first 2 that he did, but he did with the 2 pieces for the Rebel series. One just right behind me, the Joe Strummer piece, and just a little farther down, a tribute to Childish Gambino and his song, This Is America. So we'll get to those pieces a little bit, but if you've been on our Instagram or website and you've seen some of these images, then you know that Peter is a collage artist, mixed media, and he's really got an incredible style where he incorporates pieces of cityscape images from movie posters and photographs, and he'll use it in such a way that it really captures the iconography of whatever subject he's working on. Now, Songword Art House has got a particular way that we work. We start with song lyrics, and then the artist will use those song lyrics as inspiration for the original piece. And so for the Joe Strummer piece, he used the lyrics, I Fought the Law from the Clash song, and This Is America from the Childish Gambino song. So I'm going to pull up a piece. I'm going to see if I can share the screen here just so you can all see the pieces that he did. So as a reference point. So is it up there?
I'm only getting a sort of top quarter of the screen. So from the eyebrows up.
That's weird. Still?
That's a little better, but there we go. Now we got the whole screen.
Okay, so this is this Childish Gambino piece, and as you can see, and Peter will go into it in detail, but it's just the composition and the elements that are all pieced together is what struck me when I was first came in contact with Peter when I was looking for new artists for our shows. And it's kind of like online dating in a little bit, because I search for my artists using the internet, and then I will come across something visually. And as soon as something catches my eye, it's really within the first few seconds, I'll know whether I'm connected to that just on that first initial level, that sort of guttural, without thinking too much. And Peter's grabbed me immediately. Was the colors, it was the energy. And so, as you can see, it's what he did here is just an amazing, powerful piece. And so, Peter, I want to just ask you initially, tell me a little bit about the style that you have and how you arrived at that. What really was the genesis of what your style has become, and just go into a little bit of detail so I could lead up to it.
Well, I have a history of photography. I've been taking pictures since I was 6 years old. My father was a photographer. Both grandparents, both grandfathers were photographers. And so I spent up until about age, I don't know, in my mid-20s, maybe a little longer in photography. And then I somehow came across the data collage artist, John Hartfield, and his AIZ covers from the 1940s, his anti-Nazi propaganda covers and posters. And it was an amazing moment for me because I'd never seen photography used so strongly with such direct messaging, and I was absolutely mesmerized. And I also loved the idea that he was using popular culture of the time. He was doing photo montage, but also, you know, cutting and pasting um, elements from newspapers and putting them together. So really, that was the
40s, Peter?
I'm sorry.
That was work that he was doing in the 1940s?
In the 1940s, yeah,
Wow.
yeah. They're really tremendous pieces, and so I was so fascinated by this. I started to think about how I could take my photography and take the things that I was interested in, rework some of the ideas, and start creating collage. And it was just around this time that Photoshop began, and I got myself a little computer, a little Mac that I'd never been on computers before, taught myself how to use it, and then just started experimenting. And so, you know, the beginnings of my collage work were all digital, and it slowly progressed to the point now where I am making these large scale 50, 60 inch pieces that are mixed media, incorporating all of these elements, including you know, pulling street posters down and cutting them up, ripping them up, pasting them on, using paints, spray paints, acrylic paint, and just putting it all together. So it's been a long journey for me, and quite fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna click on something here so everybody can see. Hold on a second. Can you see? Is that on share now?
Yeah, it's not really playing. I just hear. I don't think you can play video on Zoom.
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes, but it's not very good. It's just kind of a big mishmash.
Not good.
Well, it's okay. I mean, it's a little bit mapped, and it's we're missing frames, so it's certainly not running smooth. But you can play it if you want. It's just sort of as a background.
So
I fought the law, and the law won.
that was amazing, but I think that it was important to show at this point because you were just referencing how you kind of put things together, and really it is an interesting process. What is it that goes through your mind when you're trying to assemble these types of pieces? So for us, you know, you can be specific with an "I Fought the Law" piece. I know that you're a Clash fan because you and I have talked about it. but what do you, like, how do you approach it? What was the first sort of step in the process of putting this together?
Well, the first step for all of these assemblages, they're portraits. They're the series. I actually call the series Heroes, and so all the people that I'm using, I have a connection with somehow. So the first element is to find an image that speaks to me, and that can be challenging. It sometimes takes me weeks and weeks to find something that I feel connected to. So once I have the image of the person, then building the reference around him without being obvious or too contrived, which is a real challenge because, as an assemblage artist, you are contriving, you're putting things together and moving them around. So it's a bit of a challenge to do that. But for the Joe Strummer piece, I really wanted to add in elements that spoke about punk, that spoke about the Clash, obviously, that spoke about UK, Britain, and what was going on at the time. So I've got the reference of the Queen in there as well, and then also just certain words, certain phrases, and there's an element of the piece where I found a piece of paper from I have so many posters that I've ripped down, and I found a piece that is very faded, and it says "fight" in a very faded, almost graphic element on the piece. You have to sort of search for it. And so elements like that are important that I can find those and include them.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that it's a little bit challenging because you're working with real world materials as well. So whatever it is that you find, am I right? Then that's kind of what you have to work with. So how either stifling or liberating can that be for you?
Well, limitation is the mother of invention, I suppose.
That was imitation.
Not imitation, no. Well, let me use limitation. I like that better. Okay. So I end up working with what I have, and it's a process, and I get into this groove, I get into this very particular headspace, and I just go through reams of elements that I have strewn all over my studio, and it's sort of organized chaos, and look for things that spark either an idea or fill in an idea that I have that I feel I can work with, specifically with the particular image that I happen to be working on. So it's a challenge, but I love it.
And I guess in terms of you finding the right image of that subject that is so well known, and I know you use the heroes and there's a lot of familiar faces. I think that avoiding something that is cliche is also difficult because there's so much, the culture of celebrityism is just rampant, especially with the internet. And then there's all these images that people can access on the internet and it's all disposable. And so, you got to avoid the trappings of producing something that people regard as disposable. And I think that maybe, on some level, that your work, at least as I see it, is that you're making a commentary on that by reusing and recycling things that, ultimately would be disposed of.
Absolutely. Well, certainly in the elements that I am adhering to the canvas, it's all elements of paper, postering, and even I found an old catalog, like a paper catalog thrown out in the garbage, and it was very weathered, and it looked like it was 1,000 years old. And I actually used that in the Gambino piece. So I look for that kind of thing, the things that people will not pay attention to in society when they're walking down the street, and to them it's not something that may grab them. I look for that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a line that describes your work as densely layered assembled portraits that reflect his fascination with media consumption, cultural icons, and urban decay. Talk to me a little bit about your influence. You're a Toronto boy, and I understand what that means. we have a big small city, and that city has gone through a major renaissance in the last 15 years. And so tell me a little bit about what sort of what informs your voice, I suppose, and how does Toronto play a part in that?
Well, Toronto is a part of it, but I think a lot of inspiration also came from the other cities that I have lived in and experienced and traveled to, obviously previous to COVID. I always look for the urban detritus that every city has. And so when I was spending time in New York, I loved being in the places that were kind of grimy, that were very industrial, that had old structures, the old bridges, all of the things that look like they're falling apart, but they're not. And I find that all of that to be quite inspiring. And it's difficult to find that in some places now, because we are, in North America anyway, a society obsessed with the new and with tearing down and rebuilding. And Toronto certainly falls into that as well.
Toronto's interesting though, because they will try to preserve at least a portion of the structure, and then they'll build something new around it and incorporate that. Whereas in a lot of places in America, I witness they don't value that, and you do lose it. So I give credit to Toronto for having that sensibility and cherishing the sort of the classics of their old architecture. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with the energy that you are bringing, and I think it's great. I think that you were a perfect match for the Rebel series. I think that the energy that comes from your pieces naturally is rebellious. So what would you say, are your roots in rebellion? Were you a rebellious kid who, who sort of broke all the rules as a kid and, became an artist despite your parents telling you should be a doctor or a lawyer? Where did your rebel roots begin?
Right. I mean, to a certain extent, I couldn't wait to get out of the house, the family home. And I immediately moved downtown. Took a warehouse space, built a loft in a warehouse. I think I was 21 years old. Had a big 2,000 square foot space that was very rough and tumble. It was an old empty warehouse, 150 years old probably. Had really spot.
Where was this?
Queen and the Don Valley Parkway, the old Coleman Stove and Lamp Company.
All right, cool.
Yeah, and it still had the graphic on the side of the building. It was fabulous. And so I remember my father coming down to see the space, and I had taped out, all the structures on the floor. Here's where the bathroom is. Here's a wall. here's where the loft is going to be. It's going to be 2-story because I had 14-foot ceilings. And he thought I was out of my mind. He thought I'd lost it. So, certainly to him, I was being incredibly rebellious. On a scale of 1 to 10, how rebellious? Maybe not so much. But I've also never had a real job because I could never stomach working for anybody. I just couldn't do it. I think I had a job for 3 days at a t-shirt shop in a department store. And after 3 days, I was like, you know what, guys, I can't handle this. So I had to figure it out for myself on my own. And I've done that all my life.
But you wear a lot of t-shirts, I've noticed. So, it's not like you were scarred as a child. You can still go back to the t-shirt.
I can still.
There's a therapy in you. You overcame that 3-day traumatic experience.
Right? Yeah, but I still remember it somehow. So it must have been somewhat traumatic, I think.
But you're also a musician too. You're a drummer with some serious chops. I'm a drummer with zero chops. So I respect somebody who can actually play. So tell me a little bit about how music informs your creative process.
I didn't know you were a drummer. I just learned something new.
It's not something I share with too many people because I'm really not very good. But I do enjoy playing, and I had a garage band for about 10 years, and we played the same classic rock songs over and over again. And it was fantastic. We had great times, and I just love it. But I'm just not very good. I just don't have talent. It's not very good. It's my cross to bear. But you, my friend, have chops, and I will play that before this Zoom is over because I want people to know. I should play it now. Should I play it now? You want to see it?
What's that? What are you gonna play?
Where is it? Oh my God, I'll find it. But anyways, tell me. Let's get back
Well,
to.
you're being very kind. I appreciate that.
No, but seriously, tell me about music, because I did read also that you have sort of this jazz feeling about the work that you do. You putting together has got that free flowing jazz feeling. But do you draw from jazz music or sort of the more rebellious rock music? Like where does the music come into your work?
I think all of that. In fact, I got these headphones that I'm wearing specifically for working because they're wireless, and it freed me up to just not worry about things hanging from me, so that I could listen to music specifically while I was working. And I'm a huge jazz fan because so much of what they were playing was interpretive. And when I work, it is almost an interpretive process. I am trying all sorts of different things until I find something that clicks. So I can relate to the inspired moment that jazz players always played with. But however, I find a lot of contemporary music, like I mentioned, Kendrick Lamar. He is very much almost an audio collagist. I mean, his music strikes me in such a pieced together way. Lots of sampling and layering, and I'm quite inspired by that as well. So it depends. When I was working in the summer in my studio, I have a big garage door that I open when the weather's good, and in the middle of the afternoon, the sun is coming in, and it was a very California moment to me, and so I would listen to Kendrick Lamar because it seemed to touch with, for me, what was happening in my workspace at that time. So yeah, I mean, music is important.
Because when I first approached you about doing the Rebel series, you took a long time, and you said you really wanted to focus and see what resonated with you, which character from the Rebel scene musically was something you wanted to work with, you felt connected to. And honestly, I thought for sure, like so many people, look around here in the gallery. I mean, we've got so much art here, and many of our artists went to The Clash and the Sex Pistols and Rage Against the Machine, and you went to Childish Gambino. And so I'm just curious because, he's a contemporary artist, and I'd like to know kind of what struck you about the Childish Gambino character, icon, myth, whatever you want to call it, that spoke to you about rebellion. Because frankly, it's interesting to have a debate about whether there's a lot of rebellion present in culture today. Like, what are people rebelling against, and how are they doing it? And I think that's why so many of the artists didn't gravitate to modern music, and you're the only one. So let's talk a little bit about rebellion. We'll start with kind of what your Childish Gambino curiosity was.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize that I was the only one that picked on a contemporary artist. To me, so I was focusing really on the one song of his that he came out and did a video of that went completely viral all over the world. There was a lot of statements in there about race and oppression. I mean, these are his issues. I didn't want to take on those issues. However, as an artist, I would consider him to be an artist, very much so. And I have a huge respect for what he does. And it was an honor for me to use him, in my portrait series. And so I was really drawn to that. And also, you and I were having a conversation previous when I told you I wanted to use him as a subject, and you mentioned that you really wanted me to put in my ideas of what America might mean to me, because the song is called "This Is America." So I thought about this quite a bit and looked for references that spoke to me, but also that spoke to the dichotomies of the many different Americas that exist, essentially. And you know, I hope I was successful. The nice thing about making work like this is that it's very detailed, and so looking at something on the internet, you sort of get an overall view. But I think in person, when someone comes in and sees the work in person, they can really tune into certain aspects in certain areas of the piece that are lost, you know, on a screen that's 4 by 5 inches.
Well, I agree with you.
Oh, we're taking a walk. I like that.
Take a walk here because I want to
We're
show
mobile.
people, you know, sort of what we were talking about. I mean, we've really got some amazing imagery that you've pulled. And like you said, you wanted to dive into what your sense of America is, what that rebel spirit that comes through the music, but also in your own sensibility. And so what we have here is we have, there's this character here who, you know, they've got the bling with the ring and the pistol, and there's, you know, the Statue of Liberty with helicopters that looks like it came out of, you know, Apocalypse Now. There's the martini, the fast cars, the sexuality. I mean, I think you've got it. You nailed it, you know, from a lot of the, you know, common iconography that goes along with America. And, you know, I think it just accumulates with the awesome tagline, you know, grandma told me, get your money. I mean, that says it all. I mean, it says it all because we've had that experience here where we've had people come in and said, yeah, my grandma told me to get my money too. And it's a real thing. It's a sensibility. And if you look to modern music today, what are they singing about? They're singing about how much money they have. They're singing about how much drugs they take, and they're singing about, you know, how much they're getting laid. And that's pretty much it. And so to have somebody who's speaking about rebelling against all this, I haven't seen it quite yet. I'm looking forward to it because I think that once they do tap into, you know, all the different kinds of things that are going on in society today that's worth rebelling against, there's going to be an explosion of new art. Really, there's going to be some creativity that's going to define the next generation. Now, that's me just preaching a little bit, but I'm excited for it. But I think it begins with kind of understanding what came before. And that's why we kind of go back to pieces like this one from The Clash and just talking about, you know, what they were rebelling against back in the 1970s. And so it's just to me, it's just an interesting observation that you made, saying that, you know, maybe Childish Gambino, but I think also, you know, coming from Toronto, you have a different sense of America, and that's why I was really curious as to what you came up with. Maybe there was going to be a little bit of irony in it, or just that sort of Canadian, I don't know what you call it, however it is, but we always look to a little, you know, what's culture flows north, doesn't flow the other way around for the most part, unless you got Canadians who are, you know, migrating and setting up and producing in the States. But that's always been the challenge of Canadian, you know, the Canadian identity. You agree with that or not?
I do. Certainly, it seems to flow north. You know, we get the occasional hit television show that may go south to you guys. It was important for me also, though, with all of the elements that I incorporated in the Gambino piece, it was important to not make it a preachy, "This is America," which is the title of the song that I based it on. But I actually did this in the bottom corner of the piece, I put in elements that actually say, "This is an America." And that was important for me to do, to say, you know, this does exist, but there appears to be many kinds of different ways to live and different kinds of America in a way, if I could say that. So maybe that was the moment of irony for me.
Okay.
Playing with text.
Yeah, and I did notice that. I just didn't want to mention it because I thought you made a spelling mistake, and I never.
That's it. Yes, I did. It was a grammatical mistake.
Peter. Oh, Peter. Yeah, you got one job to do. One job.
You couldn't get it right. Okay, let's not riff on this too long because I could go riff on this for an hour. All right.
What cocktail are you drinking?
My standard vodka soda.
I got a martini going on.
Cheers, buddy.
I hope everybody else who's watching this is also having a cocktail, because we hope to do these. That's the vibe here at Songword. We'd like to do cocktails and conversation and over art and just talk about meaningful things and get conversation going. And I think that it's been really interesting since it's only been a week since we've had the Rebellion series up, but we've definitely provoked some conversation, and some of it is enthusiastic and supportive, and some of it is, well, why aren't you promoting something, that hopeful, like a hopeful message, something loving? Because in these times we're so done, we're so frustrated, everything between the election and COVID and lockdowns and push and pull, racial tensions. Some people are saying, well, we're ready for something, to relax and escapism. And that is fine. But I believe, and I'm curious to know what you think, but I think the role of artists in times of trouble, in times of distress, is to express it and just tap into how people are feeling. And yes, there's a role for escapism, but I think it's a really important role, maybe a more important role, to define it through art. What do you think?
I think Rebellion is hopeful. I mean, we're not making Hallmark cards here. If you want that kind of hopeful, those are available everywhere. I think the idea of a show on Rebellion speaks to change, and change is, I view change as a potential place to go when things are maybe not working out as smoothly as you may want them to be for whatever reason. And I think it's interesting to, I mean, dwell is not the right word, but to I guess you could say dwell on the ideas of rebellion from a musical point of view. It was so prevalent in the 70s, and we really don't have that today. So what a great way to pull in a different way of thinking and looking at things than what we're dealing with now.
I agree. I mean, I just want to kind of give you a sense, and people a sense as to what has been produced here, because I think it's important just to show the company that you're in. We have, this great piece. So this one is based on God Save the Queen, and it's the Sex Pistols, and he does it with humor. And I think that that's really what we're doing. We're not trying to make, super political statements. I think that it comes with the, beauty and statement and the power of the image with, the word and how poetic it is. And also people who are familiar with the songs that were the inspiration for that are hearkening back to what was going on at the time that those songs were produced. And so, for example, like this one over here by Nikki, from Rage Against the Machine, it's extremely powerful. And that, is a statement from the 90s. And this one over here from the 70s, again, the Sex Pistols. And so I think that we could easily do a Rebel series part 1 and a Rebel series part 2. There's so many, more pieces that we could draw from and eras. And so maybe there will come a time where let's mine as much modern music as possible and use that as a way to identify the artists musically who are actually coming out and saying something important about our times. I think within the next 12 months, we're going to see much, much more of that. So I'm hopeful anyways. But I wanted to show one other thing. So like I said, you did participate in the blues exhibit that we did. And so here, this is that great John Lee Hooker piece that you did. Beautiful. And I want you to talk a little bit about, maybe your connection with the blues, either Nina or John Lee. And is there something, different that you can identify? I know that you can clearly see the technique is similar. So I don't think that there's much of a departure between your style, between what you did for the Rebels and what you did for the blues. But maybe you can speak more to that. How was there a difference in those two approaches of different musical genres?
Well, I think with the John Lee Hooker piece, I used text and torn papers more of as a graphic element rather than as a subject matter. And when you listen to the blues, or when I listen to John Lee Hooker particularly, he has such a rich history, where he comes from, what he sings about. And I think you had sent me, it was a recording of his song he was playing and with ZZ Top. So it was this great blues song, originally a John Lee Hooker song that they came together on. And it felt very modern to me, because the blues can really feel almost ancient in some respects when you listen to it. And I was fascinated by this new rendition and the energy of it, and I loved it. And I think that was what drew me. I think it was actually the same song that I ended up using. Sorry?
Boom, boom.
Boom, boom. Yes, yeah, it was terrific. So, and I loved how it became contemporary in a way.
Yeah, it's that's, I think, important for us, is bringing old songs and old messages and giving it a new energy, re-energizing it in a modern and a totally, synthesized way with fine art, but also in a modern context. So very, very happy with that. I'm super psyched and glad that the Nina Simone piece found a home. I believe it's in San Francisco. And so that's going to be lighting up some walls and some lives there. So what's ahead for us, I don't know, Peter, but it's going to be something, because I enjoy working with you tremendously.
Likewise.
Talking with you. And so we are going to, we're going to keep this rolling. So I don't know, anything else, my friend, what bring to the front?
Other than, we're all in the same boat, trying to keep things moving. And I think we just have to, as an artist making work, I just have to personally stay focused on the work, continually making it, and try not to let the noise, the outside, all the stuff that happens, everything that we're dealing with. I haven't wanted to say the word, and so I've tried to avoid the word COVID. But we're dealing with so much. It's important to try and stay focused on things that are real. And for me, it's making work. And I think it's great that you're finding ways of promoting and keeping the conversation going. So well done, sir.
Thank you, sir. Takes a village.
And cocktails too.
Wow. This is just the beginning of that, my friend. We intend to get together. You and I have never actually met in the same room physically, and I'm looking forward to that, whether me in Toronto or you come out here, but we're gonna have some fun. So continue this conversation. Thank you very, very much, my friend.
My pleasure.
We will chat soon. And if there's anybody who has any questions, they can text it to us through the chat, or if for people who are watching this on at a later date, you can always text us if you have any more questions for Peter. I can forward you the information on how to get a hold of him. But really, we hope that you come and check out these pieces because they are magnificent, and you really have to see them to believe them, because it's not like you're just not getting the same thing off a 2D digital image. I mean, these are 3-dimensional pieces, and they have, things that are curling off of them and textures and worn in a different way. And you just can't, you can't get the full picture seeing it digitally. So come by the gallery, Songword Art House in Malibu at the Lumber Yard, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe.
All right.
And thank you, Liz.
Liz. There she is. All right.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Talk soon.